Thank you. We're live streaming now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the UTA Transit Authority. Welcome those in the audience and also our staff and especially our board. Thank you for attending today. We note some absences, but we also note that we have a quorum. So, having called the meeting to order, we'll ask Rebecca to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dave, our safety minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always want to start out with our safety poster, again, suggested by one of our employees, so we got an award. It says, chance takers are accident makers. So be careful out there. We all appreciate you driving safely in the snow yesterday. In the vein of bringing you three good things, this was an article that's in the paper. A meeting between one of our front-runner operators who in January saved the life of an 8-year-old autistic child who had actually crawled under the train in the middle of the track, reunited the train operator with the mother last week. So a very good alert operator, as many of our operators, all of our operators are. Francis Rendon, who's been at UTA for 18 years. So nice recognition that made it into the paper. And last thing, we are always concerned about our employees in many, many different ways. One of them is that we offer CPR, AED classes at UTA, and over the past 4 years, we have trained 561 UTA employees in CPR. So things that we just continue to do to make sure our employees are safe along the system. Anytime you want, yes, 4 times a month. I'll give you the dates. Come on in. Thank you, sir.
Can we ask an update on the shooting last night? I have my, sorry. Can we have an update on the shooting last night?
We had an incident last night that was reported on the news. Bus on North Temple picked up a couple of young men, drove about a block, and then the bus operator asked them to leave the bus. They left the bus. After they left the bus, it is presumed that they shot out 2 of our windows. We have gotten grammar requests for the video because we have video on, but because it's an active investigation, we will not release that at this time. Thankfully, nobody on the bus was hurt. One of the passengers was shaken up a little bit, but nobody was hurt on the bus. Operator did a very nice job from what I've seen. So it's active investigation, and we're looking to find the young men that were on the bus.
They were ejected for being unruly somehow?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we literally within a block of picking them up, he pulled to the side and asked them to get off. So.
Whoa. Okay. Thank you. General comment period. Steve?
Chairman, we've received no comments online.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's turn to Trustee Acerson to discuss how we're going to handle contracting authority and expenditure authority under the new law SB 136, which changes fairly dramatically our authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We as a committee met yesterday and the previous week and just trying to sort through some of the transitions that are coming our way. And this particular one is scheduled to be enacted on May 8th, and Bob Biles spent quite a bit of time with our committee, and we went through that and discussed it, trying to make sure that as that date approaches that we have a way forward. And part of that is being able to pay for the obligations that UTA has going forward in this transition period. And on May 8th, it's at least our understanding that the authority to sign contracts or expenditures falls to the board. And there are, as Bob Biles presented that to us, there are numerous transactions that are ongoing, that are obligations. And as we discussed it, and Gina, you're welcome to chime in on this, it just seemed a little unwieldy, more than maybe what the board needs to do, and maybe present to the board an option where we can give authorization to deal with the contractual obligations that we have going forward, to where the board wouldn't have to, I mean, we could not do a consent item, but at least designate those transactions that are under obligation to UTA to pay payroll, insurance, all of those things that are common things that an organization has to do. So that's kind of the essence of our discussions, and I don't know, Bob's not here, and trying to see who's second command. Two of you, okay, well that's good. Bob will be pleased to know it takes two of you, so that's always a pretty decent sign. But I guess, do we have this? Did each of you receive this potential? Do you have questions on that? I'd welcome those at this time, because, please.
Sir, so on the Exhibit A, that makes 100% sense. It's just the ongoing obligations that need to be paid. On the resolution on item number 1, for the authorizing the executive director for contracts and expenses and change orders under that $200,000 mark, are they anticipating any particular ones, or is there?
They're not at this time, but they know in the past that could occur. There may be some maintenance, a part that needs to be ordered, and it could be over the 200,000 mark. And so, in an effort not to stymie the working condition of the organization, we want to make sure there's something in place. We don't anticipate anything right now, but that was the intent of that.
Because on number 3, I understand that's the one on the emergency.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes 100% sense. But on that item number 1, I was just curious on what could come up, but I would feel a lot more comfortable with the consent of the chair as well. So that way there's just a little bit more oversight.
So
Gina, go ahead.
From my perspective, number 1 is just adopting a resolution that's consistent with the statute. I believe the Bill SB 136 requires approval over 200,000 of the
Correct.
board. So from my perspective, this is just adopting something that is consistent with
Okay.
that.
And is it safe to assume that all these items that would be under the $200,000 mark would be already previously approved in the budget? And this is just a general administrative action?
That would be my understanding,
Okay.
yes. Thank you. Gina, any difference? Right.
I think those are great questions, Trustee Molesky, and I appreciate other comments that were made. To Trustee Molesky's point, is there any harm in adding that? I know this is in line with the statute, but doesn't preclude us from being even more transparent as far as, in consent of the chair and things of that nature. And then beyond that, would it be possible, as I serve on a number of boards, there's a financial report that's given each meeting with the check register or the expenditures been made that for that period of time, that can be at least looked at and are ratified or approved from that standpoint.
Are you talking like a treasurer's report?
Not necessarily, it would be just
I'm with
yeah, I guess it could be a treasury report or however you want to call it, but here's all the expenditures were made for that period of time. So we actually see where the dollars are going, and then it's, if there's questions that can be asked, at least it's been brought forward here.
Right. I agree. I serve on many boards as well, and we do get some kind of financial report each time.
And it's a matter of, at the very least, it's an information piece, if not saying, okay, we move approval of the expenditures. Many of them, the checks may have already been made, but At least we know, and you can break it down to, okay, here's the ones that were over 200,000, here's the ones that were less than 200,000.
Mind if I add?
Go ahead, Jerry.
We're biting this off in 2 bites. So what you have in front of you today is the work that needs to be done between now and May 23rd, when the board's going to have their next full meeting. We asked the Finance Committee to review this resolution so that we don't get ourselves in hot water with the IRS, or we don't fail to pay insurance premiums and so on between now and May 23rd. We had some discussion with the committee and appreciate the input that we're getting today. We will incorporate that into a much more detailed policy and set of procedures that we'll be putting in front of the committee on the 9th and then the full board on the 23rd, which will guide us going forward, and including a treasurer's report, so you get to see all of the expenditures, fleshing out what these emergency situations might be. Those are certainly things that we can take up in that discussion in May. We just wanted to make sure we were in compliance with the Act now, and that we were able to make these urgent payments between now and the 23rd. So appreciate that input. The kinds of issues that we would anticipate falling into this emergency category tend to be weather events or major accidents or a major failure of a system component or derailment. And they don't happen very often, but when they do, we need to move quickly. And it's, 3 in the morning, we're calling out crews to go bring a crane and, re-rail a train. And we just need to be able to move on those things. And if there's a way we can describe those situations or put parameters around it, we're happy to do it. We all know that at any given time, there's someone who is the CEO or acting CEO who has to be available. If there is an emergency, we have a emergency operations center. So in big situations like the Farmington windstorm we had several years ago that blew down all of our light poles and shut down that station, we activate that emergency operations center and actually, call people in the middle of the night. It's those kinds of things that, would activate this. I would see this being pretty rare, but we appreciate this input, and we'll be back to the Finance Committee again next month to hash out details on how this will work going forward.
What would be the order of magnitude of the cost of an emergency?
So we had a derailment down in front of the Vivint Center a couple of years ago, and all told, that one was under, I think, our 200,000 to get that back on. When we had the Farmington windstorm, just to get that station up and operational, there was a lot of cleanup. It probably was under the 200,000, but the getting that station back into full service was over $1 million. But that took time. That wasn't emergent.
So did you, after our last meeting, go and meet with representatives from the legislature and the governor's office, or did we come up with this timeline documentation? I mean, did we get and what I'm searching for here is, did we get any feedback from up on the Hill?
So we have met with both of the sponsors of the bill. Court Ashton has had conversations with the Senate President. Our lobbyists have reached out. What we have found is that the bill as written says that these things take effect May 8th. The sponsors of the bill said, well, we probably would have given you some more wiggle room, but we didn't think to put that in the law. And so, you need to follow what's written in the law.
Okay. Great. Are they meeting about any UTA items during the special session that you know of?
The session today? Not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, it's not called by the governor, so it's simply a veto override. Okay, Jeff, anything else?
I would just encourage you, between now and our next board meeting, bringing any suggestions, thoughts, give it your best thinking. We spent quite a bit of time, but once again, I'd be the first to say we haven't thought of everything. The main thing is to allow us to function in this transition period and do it professionally and effectively, and make sure that our contracts and what we do is conducted in a professional way. So anything you can think of, please forward that to us, and we'll include that in the discussion.
So are we not adopting this today?
I think the plan is to adopt this for this period of time, and then by our next board meeting, we'll refine and put any other suggestions and comments that are appropriate.
Okay, any public comment on this? Why don't we take a formal motion then, Jeff?
Now I have to do this roll call vote?
Let's just do a form. First, I need a motion.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's, I make the motion that we adopt this resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Utah Transit Authority granting contract and expenditure authority.
Okay, no amendments. Okay, second, Gina. Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's now go to Kim to talk about continuity of legal services.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you, we have a resolution that would allow an exception to Executive Limitations Policy 2.1.5 and our Corporate Policy 1.1.7. Those policies exist to keep personnel who leave the agency from coming back and contracting with us for services. We're asking for an exception to those policies for our legal department as we begin our transition of our legal services. The objective here is to ensure that we have continuity of those services as we work with the AG's office to put together a transition plan. But if attorneys do leave, we do have certain types of work that we would want to be able to potentially keep them working on. And so this exception would allow for that. It also would allow for us to not go through the standard procurement process that's required to select those legal services in those unique cases. And again, this resolution just grants us the authority to do that contracting if we need. It doesn't guarantee it or give it to anybody currently. And it would require the president, CEO, executive director to review those and enter into those contracts if we needed to do so.
Mayor?
I'm just wondering if I'm reading this right, that it is at the request of the Office of the Attorney General that this is coming forth in the wording?
They are aware of this policy exception that we're asking for, and it came up as part of the last two conversations we've had with them to ensure that we don't lose all of our legal services.
So they're aware and they're in favor of it?
They were supportive of this request.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
One would be, I lost my train of thought, but how about the aspect of, okay, let me back up. So you said unique circumstances.
Correct.
What's the definition of a unique circumstance?
Well, we would have to evaluate those, but let's take into consideration if we had somebody in the middle of litigation and they left and we were so far, going to trial in a couple of weeks. We may, depending on that particular case, want to contract with that person to continue that trial for us. That's one example. There are also some special unique legal services that are related to transit specific. Those were some of the areas the AG's office was most concerned about.
So is this driven by the AG's office, or is this driven by...
No, I want to be clear, let's
be clear, that
yeah.
the AG's office is not driving this. What we're saying is that we have until July 1 of 2019 before we get the Attorney General services. Meanwhile, we expect some attorneys to leave, some of whom have specialized experience or are handling cases that would not easily be transferred.
Thank you.
And so we've had that dialogue with the Attorney General, and you know, they can't come before July 1. So we're going to have to hire attorneys here with that experience in their new jobs, and we're not going to hire them at their current salary. We're going to hire them at their billing rate.
If I might just make a comment, more of a statement or comment here. I understand what we're trying to accomplish, and there is some real, there is a need, or there is a legitimate concern that we may lose attorneys. I also look at this as a potential perception challenge. What is the holding attorneys back from all leaving? A group of them form a firm that specializes in transit, and then basically we're taking the book of business outside potentially. And what I don't see in here is the criteria by which, you know, definitions on what is unique, when and how it would be utilized for the outside firm, the vetting process, cost controls on hourly rates and things of that nature. It seems to be a little bit vague, or not a little bit, it seemed a lot vague to me.
Sorry, was there a question? I apologize.
No, I was more
I
of a
may have
statement.
missed. Okay, I wanted to make sure.
Or unless you want to answer, is it vague or not vague?
Well, I think it provides broad circumstances for us to interpret broad circumstances depending on a case-by-case basis. Some of these things are time sensitive if people were to leave, and we're just trying to get our ducks in a row as we prepare to start on this transition, and recognizing some of our folks are already, you know, possibly going to leave. So I think there are some controls that we could, you know, do internally. We still have to work within our current budget. We don't, so.
What are those controls?
Well, we currently have requirements for doing any kind of contracting. In this particular situation, we'd have to have 2 reviews. And again, our budget drives what we can do. We can't go over budget.
I would also agree with,
Pull that mic there,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I would also agree there's some vagueness here. Just to educate me, when we say legal services, does that mean our on-staff attorneys? Does this mean the law firm or firms that we have hired to help our attorneys out there? What is this legal services?
So the legal services specific to this resolution would be legal services we would want to contract with current people who are leaving, who are current employees now, who might be leaving in the next little while. We've made exceptions to this policy before for other employees that we've wanted to have come back and do work for us on a contract basis. So it's happened before, but we already have contracts in place, or we have a list of legal firms that we can use for certain work. And so we would continue to do that process as well, obviously, if that was the more prudent way to go. But again, that example of somebody being, you know, ready to start a trial might be something that we would do this particular, you know, exercise this particular option.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So maybe the board could be enlightened a little bit about the types of things you mentioned, you know, a lawsuit or case that was appearing in court. We have potential funding, federal funding in process. We have grant management in process, all these other things. The Attorney General not in a position yet to manage that, so we could risk losing funding should we not continue on with the legal preparations and things and oversight, contracting,
that needs to happen there?
I think we have quite a few specialized areas that are related to transit that we are concerned we can't just go find in the marketplace quickly. And so that would be the types. And FTA, FRA, some of those specific things, and some of those are tied to grants and funding. So absolutely, it could be even just getting an opinion on something. It might be better to go to somebody. Again, they'd have to leave first. I mean, if they're still here, we're going to go to them. So assuming they were to leave, then we would want to just get that expertise quickly.
So in talking with the Attorney General's office, that expertise does not currently reside within their office at this point, or they're going to have to acquire that transit expertise as well?
My understanding is that does not exist there, and currently they're not staffed to help us, especially in this next, 6 to 8 months. I think, to be fair, when we're talking about our conversations with the Attorney General's office, we are having a broad conversation about multiple things in transition. And so our biggest concern is, of course, in these next, year, as we're still trying to retain staff and do that,
And it's my understanding also that right now in the Attorney General's office, should they take on issues like safety investigation or land transactions with like UDOT or somebody that they're representing in the state, they would have to have firewalls and all kinds of things in place, and that's going to take them time.
Yes, we've
to
talked
be able
with
to
them.
put that together.
Sorry. Yes, we've talked with them about some of those potential conflicts of interest, and they are working on solutions to those. But again,
it's going to take some time for them to be able
do.
to develop that. And so in the event that that's not, or that the legislature gave them till July of 2019, we have a gap that we have to make sure that we're filling.
Yes.
Just so that the needs of the agency are met. Am I correct?
Yes, that would be why we're coming to you with this request, is that we're just trying to be prepared as things happen to ensure that we keep those expertise until we so hand that off to the AG's office.
I was in the first meeting, but not the second. Did the Attorney General confirm to you that they are not able to render us services until July 1 of 2019?
We had some dialogue about that is the final date that we might try to do some transitioning starting January of 2019, but exactly what that looks like yet, and is it just in employment, exactly what that looks like, we have not vetted through. So we are not expecting any legal services to be provided to us through them prior to January and further into 2019.
Well, the statute, what does the statute allow, Jerry?
Thank you.
On or before July 1.
Yeah, so the statute states June of 2019 as kind of an end date. If it needs to transfer at least by that date, it can occur sooner. It appears like the Attorney General's office would like to begin assuming some responsibilities with the 2019 budget cycle. But the 2018 budget of the organization, of course, is already set and includes a line item for legal services that funds my staff and the contract attorneys we use to do our work. The Attorney General's office would like to look with the 2019 UTA budget at trying to transition some of those positions over in January. So I think what we're talking about here is how do you bridge the need for legal services between present date and January, when there will be ability on the part of UTA or the Attorney General's office to hire new attorneys in the event somebody departs. And so the resolution before the board would allow UTA at its discretion to tap attorneys departing if they require their expertise or help to provide continuity on matters that are already underway.
Another question, but let me make this statement. I fully understand, well, actually, I can't say I fully understand the complexities of this transition period for UTA and all the ramifications and all the things that need to take place. And this is a very important segment, the legal side and whatnot. What I don't see in here, and at the very least, maybe I'd make a recommendation that we include in consultation with the AG's office before we actually enact this type of thing, because they're ultimately going to be taking over.
I would
I can clarify there a little bit. So in our conversation, the Attorney General's office is undergoing its own transition. They just have a new civil deputy who started this week. We met with him yesterday, Kim and I and another attorney on my staff. They were supportive of providing this kind of flexibility and recognized the need for the specific transit expertise and for the continuity on matters already underway. Their reading of the statute, and I share this reading, is that on May 8th, when the bill becomes law, the Attorney General's office assumes responsibility for legal services at UTA, even if the personnel transition has not occurred yet. And so part of what our continued discussions with them will be is what exactly does that look like and how do we implement that kind of management structure? We begin at a high level and are working down through the details and are not there yet and don't have those specific answers, but they were overall supportive of doing this, recognized the need, and even stated an intention to do something similar when they assumed full control, simply because their office doesn't carry expertise in certain areas.
Is that intention written anywhere?
No,
Do you have that in writing?
These are conversations about how to transition the offices.
I'd be more comfortable with it if before it looks like UTA trying to solve this problem, that the AG come up with the written agreement or a joint resolution that they're down with doing it this way. And I think in the meantime, the board or somebody from the board ought to have some oversight as to when you make the contract and what's the rate going to be and those kind of things. I'm not supportive of it unless the AG's office wants to say, yeah, we're good with this because we're taking over on May 8th and this is how we want to do it.
So that's different than when we met with them the first time. They were very, I'm not saying they haven't changed their mind and they've had further opportunity to study, but they were very definite that they were not able to come in before July 1 by the statute, but also they just don't have the people and they don't have the budget.
They still asserted that they don't have the people. I think they tied it to January 19 because that was aligned with the UTA budget cycle. And the new UTA board, when it approves the budget, would be able to allocate whatever it allocates for legal services in a way that would match with how the AG's office does things. They stated their intention was to make attorneys who remained at UTA at that time offers to become assistant U.S. attorneys. And that transition,
Attorneys General.
Thank you. Yes, assistant attorneys general, and that transition would occur January 1 was their thinking because that aligned with the UTA budget cycle.
But I think the statute says what you said. I think they take over May 8th. I think they're responsible for legals. I think that's what it says.
They read it that way, and I do as well.
And so I think what I'm saying is let them come up with this. If they're going to be responsible for the legal services May the 8th, let them propose this plan to the board. Not UTA proposing it in lieu of them taking over is what I'm saying.
Well, maybe what we ought to do is just work for some kind of letter or agreement. Kim and Jamie, can you work towards that? I mean, you know, if Jamie weren't here and you had questions about the non-prosecution agreement, who are you going to call? Huh? Anyway, okay.
So, Jared, can I ask a question? I mean, the two of you have met with the AG's office. With that in mind, the direction of the chair to pursue some kind of acknowledgement that that's the direction they would like to see UTA enact based on May 8th deadline, what's the probability based on your conversations I mean, I don't want to leave this meeting thinking it's going to be a done deal. And
Yeah, I guess the way I would characterize our conversation with them is they have asked us to begin putting in place things that would allow for continuity of legal services, including the resolution that's before you. They would, on May 8th, come in and have responsibility for legal services and oversight and management over that. And I expect that any decision that would be made about who to utilize on certain matters from May 8th forward would be made by whoever's managing that for the Attorney General's office. I think as with the budget resolution that was being considered a few minutes ago, the concern is that absent this type of a waiver of the UTA policy and the procurement provisions, so that flexibility would not exist, and UTA would be left exposed on the legal matters that need to be managed appropriately. The UTA would be left without counsel on certain matters and without the ability to get legal advice on other concerns as they move forward.
So with that in mind, I would like to recommend that we proceed with this agreement as it's outlined and invite review on May when the Attorney General's office assumes responsibility, and if there is anything that they see that needs to be changed, that they could initiate that with the board, and we could change that in our next meeting. I'm concerned about leaving us exposed until the end of next month, when there is plenty of legal work that needs to be done. So I would make a motion, unless we need to have public hearing before I make a motion.
Well, you can make a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve this agreement as it stands, and invite the Attorney General to look it over, and if they see any need for changes, to present them at our next board meeting.
And I would second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there public comment? Ask the board for discussion.
I would say even sooner than our next meeting if they have any feedback or direction that they deem appropriate for this. Yeah. That's not an amendment, that just.
And I am supportive because while legal services, the responsibility for legal services will shift on May 8th, our fiduciary responsibility for ensuring legal services does not change until November. And I think that's a board responsibility to ensure continuity of service.
I might just state that I would have felt more comfortable along the lines of what Trustee Walker had mentioned, that if this had been presented as some sort of joint resolution or some sort of beyond just a verbal, we've had a conversation that everybody's on the same page.
And my concern is the ongoing legal services. They don't end on May 8th. The need doesn't end on May 8th. And I like Jeff would suggest that maybe if we can even do a telephonic meeting, if there is a need, we do it sooner than later. And if it makes it so we can do it before May 8th, that's wonderful. But I think we need to, I'm going to be supportive of this motion, including the fact that we are, again, looking to the AG's office for additional direction or input.
I must say, in my perfect world, there would be someone things as a liaison. I feel like we're just flying by the seat of our pants with good intent, and some of you are talking to some people, and are those the right people, and are we doing this, what we're supposed to be doing for the public? So, I don't know. Could somebody make a suggestion to maybe have some folks sitting on and help us here? Be nice to have them in the meetings for some feedback.
Be nice to what?
Have them in our meetings for feedback, and maybe a representative from the AG's office.
They have a brand new civil deputy. We started discussions with one civil deputy who then retired, or who then went somewhere else.
Oh.
The phone went dead for 2 weeks.
So there's no personnel.
The person we've been dealing with throughout the legislation has no authority and will give us no answers at all. The new civil deputy has come online and has tried to react quickly, but you know what we know, and you know what they know. And so I don't know what you do besides move forward with the current resolution.
In the very best way possible.
And then work with the Attorney General to get some kind of letter agreement or updated motion. We're not going to contract with people we don't need to. If nobody leaves, we've got no problems, but we do know people are leaving. And if they leave and they have expertise, if they've got an open case, you got to deal with them. So I don't know why all of a sudden while we're getting hung up over a week or two, we've got to function. Alex?
Just a follow-up question. I mean, I'm supportive of this motion here, but was there any timeline proposed from the legislature on this, or besides the dates themselves, or any guidance in terms of how we should be moving forward on this?
Well, we do have to submit a transition plan to the interim committee in June. Is that correct on this?
And that's
November.
UTA's
I apologize,
responsibility to
November.
submit the transition plan?
So we're working
It's
on
a shared responsibility between the Attorney General's office and us.
By November.
by November.
So that's their timeline. Okay, discussion. Had the question called. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay, tell me who the nays. Troy, Brad. Okay, so noted. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, I would take a motion to go into closed session to discuss the exemptions, exceptions set forth on the agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion, a second discussion. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously. Alex seconded. Okay, well, we note that we have reconvened in public session after a closed session. And it's now appropriate to take action on matters discussed in the private session. We have before us a resolution of Board of Trustees of Utah Transit Authority. And as preface, let me just say that Jerry and I have been discussing the proper role that he might take and what the direction of the agency should be in light of SB 136 and the sweeping changes under the subject of reform of the legislature. It's very clear to me that the legislature has wanted to clean house, if you will, at UTA and change current management, changing the board, discontinuing the Office of General Counsel. We're dealing with all of those matters one by one, but in terms of Jerry's employment, it's my recommendation that we terminate Jerry today by motion effective May 7th. That meanwhile we'll be looking for an interim director so that when the new board is impaneled by October or November, that we at that point are handing them the leadership of the agency and they can hire an executive director of their own choosing. Therefore, we have before us the resolution regarding Jerry Benson's employment as President, Chief Executive Officer, and General Manager, which notes that inasmuch as SB 36 eliminates those positions of President, Chief Executive Officer, and General Manager, the authority has no statutory authority to employ any person in these capacities beyond May 8th, 2018. We note that Article 3, Section 3B of the board's bylaws are waived by the board, and Mr. Benson, Jerry and I will sign a letter that noting that this provision is in favor of the employees so that he could not be terminated simply without notice at one board meeting. It takes a second board meeting, but Jerry's agreed to waive that by letter. The termination is not for cause. He'll be entitled to retirement, other employee benefits under the employment agreement or UTA policy in effect as of the date of the resolution. So I put that before the board and ask for your action on it. Nisha.
As a board member who's worked the very longest with Mr. Jerry Benson, I recommend the resolution to terminate him. Battery died. Oh.
Okay, try it again.
No, it's trying. It's very loud. Thank you. I recommend the resolution to terminate Jerry Benson, recognizing that this is probably the most valiant and honorable thing I have ever seen, and a man that I have grown to love, respect, and admire over the many, many years I've worked with him. Jerry, know I love you.
So is that a motion?
That was the motion. I didn't make the motion in that.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Have a second by Trustee Everett Hall. Call for public comment. Seeing none, we'll turn it to the board for action. Any comments anyone wants to make? Question having been called then. Call for a vote. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. We also, did we have Gina on the phone? Gina, I need to hear your vote.
Sorry, I have not been able to hear any of the conversation. I'm not sure what the motion is.
The matter of business before us is a resolution terminating Jerry's employment in light of the desire of the legislature to create a reformed agency, that he be terminated effective May 7th. And it's been moved and seconded and unanimously voted in favor. And so we're asking for your aye or nay.
Yeah, I heard that. So I would, that's tough to absorb without the benefit of discussion, but if it's unanimous to this point, then I'll vote yes.
So is that a yay?
That's a yes.
Okay, thank you, Gina. We'll take that and record as an, thanks, Babs. Recognize that also as an aye vote, and so the motion carries unanimously. Are there any other matters of business? Okay, let's discuss our further meeting. We're not planning on a special meeting before May 8th. So our next regular meeting is when? 23rd? Okay, May 23rd at 1:30. Thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Yeah, Nisha.
May we please not let Jerry slide out unnoticed, and may we have a fabulously spectacular celebration of his work before he leaves.
Yeah.
That's a motion.
Yeah.
I'll second that one.
I think it'll be mid-May, but we'll get her done. Okay. Spectacularly fabulous. Those are in the minute. All right. Motion and second. All in favor, aye? Aye.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.